Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to take on a Penn SpinFisher, the version 5, 5500. We'll call it a reel in a bag project, but actually it came into me with a couple of problems and it was disassembled for diagnosis. We'll show you what the problems were. We're going to replace all the main gearing in this, so we'll have an opportunity here to work on a rebuild. And we'll show you how the reel goes back together so that this one can go back fishing again. So we have a couple of problems. The reel was kind of grinding away and we had a sloppy bail, and this is an unusual one. And what happens is this bail wire came out of the arm. Well, that's not supposed to be. You can actually see that there's a cut here that should hold this in place. Well, in the assembly port that just didn't work out. There's a little hex nut here that holds, but this one wasn't holding, so we had to go ahead and reorder a new bail. So we'll show you how to replace the bail. This arm was all worn and nicked up in the process, so we figured we might as well go ahead and replace the bail arm while we're at it. And we're going to show you how to rebuild the reel. Well, I'm going to start by doing the basic reel rebuild here. So we just put the bail arm and assembly away. Got a grind in the gear, so I recommend if we're going to do this, we might as well do it all. And to do it all meant that we were going to replace the main gear and the pinion gear and take care of that grind, in addition to taking care of the broken bail wire. So I'm just going to take some of these parts and put them off to the side and get started with first the up top assembly. So this is a pinion gear assembly. And what we have in the pinion gear assembly is we have a collar and a bearing up top. And you get to this by removing the rotor. After you take off the spool, you remove the rotor. The rotor's tied onto the top of this. And once that's off, you're going to find a collar. This would be the collar. And then when you remove the 3 screws in the collar, you can pull this whole assembly out. Notice when you do this that you have 2 sides of this. You have a small side and a wide side. The bearing faces up in this case, and there's a little ridge on the bottom there which is going to enable you to clear the collar for the instant anti-reverse. So we're going to pull that whole assembly off here. This was way over greased when I started this. That caused a failure in that anti-reverse and a skip. And when we did that, we figured we might as well just go ahead and do the whole thing to eliminate issues. I'm not going to clean this up because I have a replacement. And I got the replacements. A lot of folks ask, where did you get them? I get the replacements for Penn reel parts through mysticparts.com. Very reliable supplier. It used to be known as pennparts.com. Very reliable supplier, great staff over there. If you need any kind of Penn parts, go there for them. They're great to work with. All right, here's that instant anti-reverse assembly. That comes next. So the way Penn sets this up, they have sealed bearings in these. So I'm going to just wipe the grease off. Bearing can go on top of the pinion gear, and you can grease this any time. So let's use a little bit of that Penn grease right now. I use an artist brush and Penn precision reel grease, not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's a fishing reel grease. And if you are working on your fishing reels, please use Penn or use fishing reel greases to ensure that you have the maximum longevity of it and that you have the right lubrication properties and so on. Fishing reel greases and oils are the only way to go. I really don't care too much about whose it is, but I do care that you use it. Alright, this was the issue with the reel. It had a fault or an anti-reverse that wasn't holding all the time. And one of the things you want to note, you have 2 sides on this. You have a plastic side and you have a metal side. And the plastic side faces downward. Okay, with that aside, remember what we said on this one. These are shielded so you don't need to do anything oil-wise with these. There's a small side, or a wide side and a small side. The wide side goes down. I just want to make sure that we're going to be in the right direction with this. So let's just go ahead and put this in. Put the rotor on briefly. And this will tell us whether we're going in the right direction or not. It's going to spin that way, and it's going to backstop, so we have that assembly proper. If you find that you've aligned this whole structure, and then you don't have the back, if your reel doesn't turn, well, you have the anti-reverse burring in upside down. Simple enough fix. Alright, we're going to take our collar. We're going to put that on. This is a triangular collar. It fits any of the 3 posts. If you have an irregular collar, or you have a bolt pattern that's different, then you want to make sure that you note the position of where the different points are and work accordingly. Okay, we have 3 little screws that go in here next. This has been some time since I took this reel apart. It's a good place to tell you, if you don't know about the positioning of the pieces and parts, take pictures while you're doing this. Those pictures will be invaluable to you if you get stuck along the way of trying to reassemble these. Okay, that's one. And I don't tighten that one all the way down initially, because you can be out of alignment on the other 2 holes. So just be careful as you do this. And if my hand's blocking this for a moment, I do apologize, but we'll square all of that up in a moment. I'll show you more about that. It's a good time, I guess, to tell you, if you like these kinds of videos, if you enjoy the hobby of reel repair, please subscribe to my channel. I post frequently, try to be posting every day of late with this pandemic and all. And I cover all kinds of reels. This one happens to be a Penn reel with a bad anti-reverse issue, but I work on all types of reels, spinners like we're working on here, conventional reels, bait casting reels, big saltwater reels, and small freshwater reels. So it's a good variety, and if you want to learn about how to repair reels or how reels come together, or any of those types of things that involve fishing reel repair as a hobby, maybe you want to rebuild them and resell them, or maybe you just want to help out a friend, these are good videos to do that with. Alright, we're just getting the last of the tie down screws in. Well, next up then is the rotor, and the rotor is telling you the story of why the anti-reverse failed and why we were replacing the gears. This reel obviously got dunked. You can see all of the sand and everything under the rotor, and once that gets inside the reel, well, that becomes problematic to say the least. It's easier for the sand and the salt water on that rotor to penetrate in here, eat up that anti-reverse gear, and then have an effect coming down the chain on the pinion gear. So that's why we made the decision to go ahead and replace those gears, get rid of the grinding noise that happens there. Now this one's very obvious because there's chunky sand in it. And I'm going to take that off my desk because I don't want to transfer that to the next reel. But what you don't see is the micro sands that get in there as well. So when you get salt water in particular coming down on your reel, well, that's going to evaporate over time, and that evaporation is going to leave micro sands and salt and particles in there that you just can't see, but it will have an abrasive and a detrimental effect on it, regardless of whether you can see it or not. All right, well, we've just pretty much cleaned that sand out. While I have this, I'm going to throw a little bit of oil into that slide bar for the trip lever. I'll bring that back up. All right, I have that shim washer that goes onto the top of the bearing. And let's take a moment, come on over here then and do this, which is the replacement bail. I'm going to pull that screw off that has the rotor and the end cap on it, and we'll be able to replace the bail on this one. So I can leave that screw in here. Notice that there is a washer cap underneath. Here's your roller assembly. This is your cup and the bearing for the rotor. And rotor the bail. Put a little bit of oil in there, keep that nice and fresh. This is the arm that broke off. So I'm going to go grab the new assembly now. It's rare that these break off and you can't adjust them. I was asked to adjust, well, that hex nut, for whatever reason, the Allen key nut that you could tighten was just out of gas. So you can see it here. Almost looks like an oil hole, but it is actually a micro. And we're going to replace this piece of the bail while we're at it as well. We decided might as well dress the reel up. Plus, I was noticing that it wasn't holding very well, so I'm not sure. And when you're not sure, it's for the $1 or $2 that the part costs. It's much easier just to go put the new one back on. This bail was bent up, and I think maybe that's what caused the issue there. All right, I'm going to just get that new piece of bail. And while I do that, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you looking to repair a reel, maybe you're working on a repair of a reel and you're stuck, or maybe you just want to know a little bit more about the reel itself, just leave that in the comment section of this, and I'll be happy to provide you with that information. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly let you know. I'll try and guide you, and if I do know the answer, well, hopefully I'll get you on to the next step of your repair, or at least solve your curiosity. All right, I just put the new one in. If you're wondering why I didn't attach the bail arm, you don't need to attach that bail arm right there. Tighten that all down, make sure you have a nice movement to it. Now this has got a little hook to it, so you start like this, kind of opposite angle, push it in and then pull it down, and you're set on that. Now we want to grab the bearing and the bearing cap, and then a little shim washer, and then we can go ahead and put this back on and tighten that screw down, and we'll be good. So that's how you replace a bail wire in an arm if you have that need. These are pretty rugged bail wires, but they do bend, they do break, as we saw here. It's unusual, but it does happen, and if it does happen, now you know how to fix that. Make sure that it moves nice and easily. And on this one, I'm going to just go ahead and oil this seam since we didn't take that off. You don't need to take a spring assembly for a bail off if the spring assembly is working fine. Okay, bail goes on next then, or the rotor rather, bail's on. There's a little tie-down washer there, so make sure that that goes on with you. Go ahead and grab the rotor nut. And I'm not sure if this one is the 12mm or not. It's probably not. Nope, it is. All right. So this is a little 12mm deep socket. You're going to need a deep socket for this because you have that lip on the rotor. Give it a spin. Oh, that's doing what it should be doing. Very nice. And it's backstopping. There you go. Put a flip up, turn it, make sure that the bail is tripping beautifully. Nice and tight, not going anywhere, which is what the customer had asked for. All right, I'm going to just do a little bit more of the cleaning on the bottom of the case here. You can see that this has got some kind of blued grease in it, but it's not the factory grease. If it is the factory grease, then it's the result of this this reel going under, because it's a very different color blue than the Penn grease that comes in the reel. So I'm not sure if there was water intrusion in this or not, but we're going to take a moment to clean that out. I'm going to use some penetrating oil as a degreaser. This is almost like a taffy kind of a setup here. It's not very liquid or pliable. It's gummy, so that obviously will have an effect on the reel performance as well. Okay, just go grab that and get that out of the way. Careful not to shoot that penetrating oil on the new pinion gear that you just greased up. Alright, with the case appropriately cleaned and all of that old grease out of there, it's time to put some new grease in. So again, I'm using Penn's Precision Reel Grease. Not because it's a Penn reel, doesn't hurt the Penn reels for sure, but because it's a fishing reel grease. Alright, next up is the Crosswind Gear. You want to make sure that when you did this that you inspected the Crosswind Gear, that you checked that the teeth are all uniform, that there's no chips or cracks in them, because the reel just won't work right if there are. The Crosswind Gear goes in, and there's this big button screw which holds that Crosswind Gear in place. And I think maybe we want to put this bearing in first, just because sometimes it's harder to get in the case with that gear installed. So put the bearing in, put the Crosswind Gear in, Crosswind screw, and then we can tighten it all down there. This bearing looks to be a shielded bearing, so I'm going to oil it. Doesn't seem to be a sealed bearing. We do have an extra gasket around the side here to seal that case. But from what I can tell, it's not a sealed bearing. We have a funny little runner on this Crosswind block, and I've noticed from time to time this fails. There's a little turning point here. This one is not turning very well. So let's take that off and see what's going on there. Just trying to work it to start turning. This is further evidence, I think, that something got in the case. There we go. Just want to make sure that we loosen that up. I'm going to use some penetrating oil there to complete that. I think it's either dried grease or there was some sand or the like in there. There you go, spinning beautifully now. Doing what it should be doing. That's going to ride on the inside of the case there, and it's going to make the Crosswind block go up and down easier. And I've noticed that's a failure point on these reels. For whatever reason, that becomes elongated and just doesn't work properly on some reels. Alright, we're going to just grease the back of this, make sure we get grease into the slot. Then we can reinstall this portion. And you'll see as this goes in, there's the ramp that's going to ride on in the back of the case. So go ahead and get a little bit of grease on there as well. Some folks have asked about what is this brush. It's just simply an artist's brush, and I like it because the hairs don't shed on it. Alright, we're going to go replace the main gear with a new one. Again, when you hear a grinding, it's just not worth replacing one piece. You're going to be doing the reel. The service is, if you want to restore it all, the gears just don't make that much difference in terms of pricing to omit one. If you're going to do the pinion gear, which in this case likely was the one that got damaged by the sand, well, that can transfer that damage and the grinding over to the one that it interfaces, which is the main gear. So don't be penny wise and pound foolish, as the saying goes. I'm going to put the main gear in just like that. And get that axle shaft at the moment. Now here's something I did when I took the reel off that I recommend you do. I took the two screws that hold the Crosswind block and I put them right back into this axle shaft. So when I go to reinstall, I know where they are. Before I do that, there's one more piece I just noticed in my parts tray here. That's the tie down for the rotor nut. And I need to get the tie down screw. My screwdriver. So a good recommendation, if you're going to take a reel apart, take pictures. at a minimum, get the schematic for the reel. That way, if you get stuck along the way, you can go back and have a reference point. All right, I'm going to wipe down the axle shaft, light coat of grease onto the axle shaft. Take this porch tray out of the way a little bit, and we're going to put the axle shaft through. And then we want to make sure that we mate the axle shaft with the crosswind block, and that you find the two holes aligned in that crosswind block. You can then take those two screws that I had before, and we can go put those in. I think these require the micro screwdriver. They're very small. Phillips head on them. I'm just going to use a little bit of grease on the end of that micro screwdriver to try and hold that screw, at least until I get it started. That's one in. Those of you that watch the videos know me and these little screws. Well, we have fun from time to time. Just be patient. There's no rush. It's not speed here. Okay, those are in. Back to my tray. I have a washer here for that adjuster. There's next. And the bearing goes on. We can close this case up. Make sure when you do that that you have the gasket in place so that it seals properly. And then we have 4 case screws here. They're all the same. I noted that when I took this reel apart. So it doesn't matter what position you put them back in. This is the 5th generation of the Penn SpinFisher. They started in 1961 with the greenies, and about every decade or so it seems they've upped the next generation. We're on generation 6 now, and there are some changes, mostly in materials. The first 2 generations, it seemed to be paint color that was the difference. You went from what we call the greenie to what we've come to know as the black and golds, and that black and gold paint scheme has continued throughout. The 3rd generation and 4th generation went to graphite in the casing. In the SSG series, the SpinFisher skirted spool graphite. And then the 5th and 6th, well, the 5th and 6th started being made in China, and they've changed some of the gearing and some of the design according to the previous. So it looks like generation 1 and 2 were very similar. Generation 3 and 4, the SS 450 or the 4500 compared very similarly. And now the 5 and 6 generations seem to be very similar as well. All right, that's that. And we have a washer that goes on our axle shaft. That's the metal one. And then we have a spool washer. From time to time I'm asked what that spool washer does. Well, that controls the height of the spool, and that controls the line lay of the spool. All right, let's put the spool back on. Let's check the top. I checked the bottom before. When I had this apart, I checked the slammer drag underneath. Let's check the top drag. I didn't do that. Just want to clean up the top. So this has one big slammer drag underneath. That's again keeping it out of harm's way. This is the metal one up top with a HT100 drag. So you got to double-sided drag here. They're in good condition. I'm going to remount the spool, the adjuster nut. It's got a nice rubber gasket on it to keep water out of the spool. That's the problem with the top drag wheels, is the water that gets in them. Tighten that all down, make sure it's holding, then back off your drag. A little bit more evidence of the saltwater intrusion. We got a little bit of salt underneath here. Let's get that out of there. You can see, look at that sand. That's kind of crazy, but that's a lot of sand that this reel took on here. All right, handle on, and ultimately have we solved the issue? So the two issues, we had an anti-reverse that did not work, and we had a loose bail, and we had sanding going on inside the reel. So let's see how we did. And there you go. We're back to what we should have in terms of a nice performing reel. And we're back to a nice functioning bail. So that's it. That's your Penn SpinFisher V. It's the 5500 series. And basically it resulted in a complete rebuild of this reel to solve the issue with a bad anti-reverse and a loose bail wire. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you've learned something from it. If you're a first responder or essential personnel, anybody working to keep us safe during the pandemic, thank you for everything it is that you've been doing for us. To all, please stay safe, stay well, stay watching. I wish you great fishing, and have a great day. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.